In this episode, you'll see a very mighty giant squid that attacks divers, a 110-pound-long pseudo-jellyfish, dreadful underwater worms, the most dangerous oceanic predators, the behemoths that are completely innocuous, and many other strong and big underwater creatures. Surely you've heard about giant squids. They usually swim in cold waters. These creatures are characterized by simply colossal size, and it's believed that they were taken for kraken by ancient sailors. In fact, these squids are not as dangerous to humans as is commonly believed. We hardly cross with them. Much more dangerous are Humboldt squids. Here, one of these mollusks attacked the TV presenter Steve Backshall. It started biting him and tried to cling to him, and that's not the only incident. The squid, which can reach almost 6.5 feet and weighs 110 pounds, negatively perceives any unfamiliar objects, and it attacks them without a second thought. These mollusks often disable the cameras of scientists. They attack divers, they sometimes rise closer to the surface, and they attack people snorkeling. Even one such large squid has impressive power, and it can pose a threat to humans. But these mollusks can surprise us with something else. They move in shoals of up to 1,200 individuals. It's scary to imagine what would happen if you came across such a swarm underwater. And if a person manages to get away from a huge Humboldt squid, do not relax. It can be supported by a cephalopod relative, the giant octopus. These giants can be even larger than a squid. Most individuals grow to about 5 to 6.5 feet in length. There were also record breakers with a length of 10 feet, and taking into account the spread of tentacles, they even reached 33 feet in length. Add to this a couple hundred pounds of weight. Forget about mythical kraken, this is the real one, swimming in the ocean. Like its relative squid, the giant octopus has a fiery temper. It often pounces on divers. As a rule, this creepy octopus intentionally sucks on people and can cause serious damage to their health. Also, sometimes the octopus works with its tentacles on the scuba diver, and it can disable it. You can see what this is fraught with, even at a depth. There are reports that several people even became victims of this monster. What is there? This octopus attacks even sharks, and it does it very successfully. He, by the way, does not live in the open ocean, but in coastal areas, so it's quite possible to encounter it. But this can be avoided by simply not going to great depths. The octopus does not surface very often. Japanese spider crab. When you look at this creature, you cannot believe that it's even real. It's more like something out of a horror movie than a real creature. Trust me, it's more than real. The Japanese spider crab is the largest arthropod representative in principle, as well as one of the largest sea creatures. Its length can reach 20 feet with legs, and without legs, it's not small, about 3.5 feet long. In ancient times, the arthropod was considered a harbinger of bad news. It's believed that it gets out of the murky depths of the ocean to lay on people earthquakes and other natural disasters. If I were an ancient Japanese, I would also be wary of this creature. However, modern science has put everything in its place. First, the fact that the crab surfaces is a consequence, not the cause of the earthquake. And secondly, despite its terrifying appearance and incredible size, the spider crab is not a threat, and it's certainly not capable of causing cataclysms. This typical example of deep-sea gigantism calmly lives at a decent depth, and it does not touch anyone. Red crabs are often kept in large aquariums, and they're used for scientific and decorative purposes. They say they're also used for food, but this is likely to be extremely rare. Those are fans of something specific who do this. Since the spider crab feeds on carrion, it lives at great depths. Its meat is bitter, and it's not particularly edible. If you were to ask which sea creature is the longest in the world, you would say the blue whale without a second thought. After all, there are no animals in the world longer than 110 feet. But what if I told you that there are? Well, there's one thing. They're Cyanea, very large jellyfish. If you take their tentacles into account, then purely technically, these jellyfish would be longer than many blue whales. The record holder had tentacles 119.8 feet long, longer than the largest blue whale. But even without tentacles, these creatures are impressive in size. The diameter of their dome can exceed 6.5 feet, although most Cyanea are smaller. You should not be afraid of this jellyfish. Unlike the same box jellyfish, this one can be small, but at the same time incredibly toxic. This huge jellyfish is not capable of killing a person. Contact with Cyanea can be unpleasant, you may get a rash, and toxins can cause allergies. However, this is usually the maximum capabilities of this beauty. Its venom destroys small animals in 1 or 2, while medium and large animals can suffer from significant damage. 118 feet is not the limit for sea creatures. What about 164 feet? This is the size of a Portuguese man-o'-war, aka a blue bottle. In fact, it's not just one creature, it's many. The jellyfish-like animal is actually a siphonophore. It consists of many polyps and jellyfish that are attached to this sail, the base of the organism. For this reason, the creature is called a ship. In its extended state, all these polyps and jellyfish can stretch up to 164 feet, and this is not only impressive, but it also creates a threat. If the same cyanea can only sting unpleasantly, the Portuguese man-o'-war can kill a person, and it doesn't necessarily need to be nearby. A person can accidentally touch the elongated tentacles that are equipped with a huge number of stinging cells containing poisonous secretion. Given that the tentacles are virtually colorless, they merge with the seawater, and they're difficult to distinguish for swimmers. Such a scenario is quite possible. The poison causes a paralytic effect, and if you manage to get out of this trap, burns and scars are guaranteed. More importantly, Portuguese man-o'-wars are often washed ashore, and even when they're there or in a dried form, the tentacles will still be very dangerous. Giant tube worm. Do you think you're looking at some common seabed vegetation? What if I told you it was a living organism? What's more, they're giant tube worms. Yes, worms may not only be in the ground, these monsters are swaying under the influence of bottom currents, showing blood-filled tentacles out of the tube. In this photo, you can see the tubes in white and the worm tentacles in red. When in danger, they hide back into the tube. The giant tube worm is not called giant for nothing. The length of the tube reaches 8 to 10 feet, while the worm itself grows up to 5 feet. The creature, which looks like something out of a horror movie, has neither a mouth nor a stomach. It's fed by symbiotic bacteria that occupy almost the entire body cavity and make up about half the worm's weight. The red blood of the giant tube worm, passing through the tentacles of the upper end of the body, absorb hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and oxygen, as well as mineral salts from the water. Bacteria synthesize amino acids and proteins from these compounds, and the giant tube worm feeds on them. It's unbelievable that on our planet, in principle, live such creatures. They look more like some kind of fiction. Nature knows how to surprise. In any case, don't worry, the giant tube worm is not dangerous to humans. It lives at a huge depth of 1.5 miles, where a person will never get without protection. And even if he did, even in theory, the giant tube worm would not be able to eat it. The seabed has a way of surprising, and this is evident not only in strange worms but also in sponges. In the ocean, you can find giant sponges that are so large that a person could fit in them. In fact, some divers even climb into them. They can reach 6.5 feet in height, the same amount in width, and they can be over 10 feet long. Given that giant sponges are living creatures, they can rightfully be called one of the largest inhabitants of the ocean. Yes, they're very much alive. Sea sponges feed by pumping huge volumes of water through them and filtering out plankton, microorganisms, and suspended organic matter. From the outside, it's not noticeable, but if you spray a colored spray near the sponge, you can see the constant filtering process. There are also predatory sponges that feed on crustaceans and other small animals. Also, these creatures are some of the planet's top long-lived creatures. Because of their peaceful lifestyle, a sea sponge can live for several centuries or millennia without any problems. Speaking of problems, the next sea creature is very good at creating them as well for many of its neighbors in the ocean and even on land at once. The killer whale is perhaps the most advanced and ferocious marine predator of all, and at the same time one of the largest creatures of the ocean. Adults can reach a length of 33 feet with a weight of 8 tons. This makes them the largest representative of the dolphin family. Huge dimensions impose a certain imprint on the life of the orca. Every day it has to consume 330 pounds of meat to stay in shape. But orcas have no special problems with this. Killer whales, as they're called, are characterized not only by their large size but also by the strongest bite force in the world, as well as a very developed intelligence. Orcas usually hunt in a group, communicating with each other with clicks, whistles, and shouts. Each member of the group knows their tasks and position. Being together, orcas have no trouble neutralizing seals, penguins, stingrays, and even sharks and whales. Speaking of them, orcas rarely hunt whales, and they prefer to finish their carcasses of already breathless giants. In fact, they'd rather track down another seal than hunt a whale. Nevertheless, they have a special relationship with one whale. I'm talking about the sperm whale. whale. Sperm whale cubs and some adult females may be attacked by killer whales. In this case, orcas tend to drive the whale away from the pack. If there's one, they inflict several wounds on it. Still, this doesn't happen often, and it doesn't happen to male sperm whales at all. After all, the sperm whale is one of the largest inhabitants of the ocean, as well as the largest marine predator. Males weigh 40 tons with a length of 65 feet. No killer whale can cope with such a giant. We can only rely on not yet grown cubs. Sperm whales themselves do not hunt orcas, although if they do, they can teach them a lesson or repel their attack so that they never come to them again. These toothed whales are much more fond of hunting large squid. They make up the largest part of the diet of the giants. They can eat 800 of these mollusks a day, for a total of about a ton of food each day. Large squids usually live deep. However, the sperm whales don't care. These giants are famous for their ability to extreme diving, chasing a squid or fish, hiding from an unnecessary battle. The sperm whale can dive to depths of up to 2 to 2.5 miles. That's deeper than any other air-breathing animal. You may wonder how a whale doesn't get torn under such hellish pressure. After all, we all know that only specific organisms can survive at such depths, and the rest of us would simply be flattened. That's true, but the sperm whale has a trick, a special anatomical structure. The whale's body is largely made up of fat and other fluids with very little compression. In addition, the lungs of the sperm whale, relative to the volume of the body, is half the size of land animals. So the body of the whale does not accumulate excess nitrogen. This happens in all other living creatures when diving to great depths. By the way, being a predatory whale, the sperm whale can also pose a danger to humans. There are cases of sperm whales swallowing people and repeatedly sinking their boats, but this only happens when hunting, and whalers from the past have first-hand knowledge of this. However, if you do not touch a sperm whale, it's unlikely to attack. You can swim with it, even if it's a bit risky. Whale shark. It's much better to swim with this one. This is one of the few non-predatory sharks that doesn't seem to care at all about what's going on around them. It's understandable. When you're the biggest fish in the world that no one can mess with, you don't have to worry. Whale sharks grow up to 60 to 65 feet and weigh 20 tons. They are in no hurry. They swim through the ocean at a speed of no more than 3 miles an hour, and they feed on plankton like a whale. Actually, this shark got its name because of this, as well as the corresponding size. Whale sharks are never against divers. They do not just let them swim near them, they don't even react to people who ride on their back. It's a pity that these unique creatures are on the verge of extinction. Due to illegal catching, the number of whale sharks leaves much to be desired. Manta. This is another gentle giant from the world of underwater creatures. This stingray is otherwise known as the giant sea devil, but this is somehow wrong. There's nothing devilish about it. Most likely, the name comes from the past when these stingrays were accused of monstrous attacks on boats and even eating sailors. In reality, these are all just rumors and exaggerations. Like whale sharks, mantas don't care about us and pose no threat. These giants, whose width can exceed 30 feet and weight 3 tons, calmly prowl the sea and feed on zooplankton, filtering it out of the water. But the big sharks and orcas these gentlemen should be wary of. These predators sometimes hunt mantas and traumatize them by biting off their fins. These giants also like to rise to the surface and even jump out of the water, but it's still unknown why they do this. On the other hand, the next guy prefers to hide in the depths, and they quite rarely please people with their appearance on the surface. I'm talking about the giant oarfish, the longest bony fish in the world. It can reach 36 feet and weigh 660 pounds. Such a crazy catch will hold only a dozen people. In general, the appearance of the giant oarfish on the surface is usually far from funny. It's rather frightening. For example, in South Africa, it's considered a harbinger of disaster, a tsunami, or earthquake. In ancient times, and now, many believe that when such a fish, similar to a sea serpent, appears at the surface, this does not mean good. What's interesting, the forecast usually works, and soon a tsunami or earthquakes occur. In fact, longfish simply feel geological faults, and dwelling at great depths, they feel the approach of tremors. That's why they intuitively rise higher. But sometimes giant oarfish are simply swept into the upper layers of water without any subsequent earthquakes, although this happens very rarely. What other dangerous and unique animals live in the water? I'll tell you now. Meet Cassius. Have you ever heard of Cassius? No, not the legendary Muhammad Ali, who had that name at birth, but the giant crocodile, one of the largest on the planet. He was caught in 1984 and immediately placed in a zoo where he lives to this day. The length of the monster is about 18 feet, and it weighs a ton. At the same time, the age of the reptile is more than 110 years. By the way, do you know what the big guy got for his birthday? At his 110th birthday, the Rangers brought him a 44-pound pie with chickens, which he gobbled up in less than a minute. Members of his species have no trouble living in saltwater, but they usually live in mangrove swamps, deltas, lagoons, and downstream rivers. Judging by the many scars and the missing part of the tail, Cassius had a very busy life full of fights. It's because of this, by the way, that he was named after the famous boxer. However, this animal is not the only bully and dangerous inhabitant of the planet as a whole. His congeners certainly pose no less danger to humans and all life around. Saltwater crocodiles are the largest of modern crocodiles. Moreover, the saltwater crocodile is one of the largest modern predators on our planet. It's superior to the polar bear in terms of length and weight, with the polar bear being inferior in terms of size to some toothed whales, sharks, and killer whales. It's said that its head alone can weigh more than 440 pounds. Here's another interesting fact about this monster. It's able to do without food for up to 6 months. It also has an unusual method of diving underwater. To do this, the saltwater crocodile specially swallows a couple of large stones, serving as a ballast. The leatherback sea turtle is the largest modern turtle in the world. Usually these creatures are up to 8.2 feet long, have a flipper span of up to 16 feet, and weigh 1,300 pounds. Despite such size, there's nothing bad to say about this turtle in terms of appearance. To some, it may even seem cute. But if you look into its mouth, everything immediately falls into place. Just look at it. It's a creepy sight. All these outgrowths are nothing but teeth, with which the turtle is ready to deal with absolutely any prey, like a meat grinder. Moreover, these teeth cover not only the turtle's throat, but also its entire esophagus. As you may have noticed, the teeth are directed inwards. Such a device allows the reptile to successfully push the slippery food straight to the stomach and not let it make an extra movement in the opposite direction. The poor creatures that are destined for such a fate are mostly small fish, crustaceans, algae, and jellyfish. The only good thing is that leatherback sea turtles do not live in large groups. They're used to traveling alone, sleeping, resting, gaining strength, and hunting only when they really need it. Therefore, if a male has discovered a female on the horizon, they immediately get down to business without unnecessary romance and foreplay. Another such occasion may not occur very soon. By the way, despite the impressive size of the leatherback sea turtle, it is far from being the largest of all turtles in history. There was one, to put it mildly, huge creature on the planet called Archelon. All of its remains, as of today, are dated from the late Cretaceous period about 70 million years ago. Most likely, the giant turtle, which weighed more than 2 tons, became extinct at the junction of the two periods, the Cretaceous and the Jurassic. However, while Archelon lived, it made a lot of noise in the underwater world. Its skull was about 27.5 inches long, and it had a large, curved beak resembling that of modern birds of prey. But of special interest are the front flippers. They were really huge, up to 16 feet in span. They served as an auxiliary tool along with an instrument for movement. The marine iguana is the calling card of the Galapagos Islands. This creature attracts from the first seconds with its appearance. It's very large, covered with scales, has a crest of bony plates on its back, formidable claws, and a cold, completely unemotional look that gives you goosebumps. It feels like a prehistoric monster, some kind of dinosaur in a reduced form, doesn't it? The marine iguana is a very agile and nimble creature that dives to a depth of 49 feet underwater and looks for the food it needs, which is usually algae and plants. The length of an adult is about 5 feet. The marine iguana weighs quite a bit, no more than 26 pounds. The fact that most of its body length is the tail. To be fair, it should be noted that it's not useless and helps it to swim greatly. The iguana's body coloration is mostly dark shades. It camouflages easily among rocks and bushes and does not fear attacks from predators. The marine iguana is confident in its beautiful innate armor. It also understands that if it's attacked by any predator from the shore, at the very least it can exhaust it. After all, the iguana is capable of holding its breath for as much as an hour. And here's one more important point. Spending a lot of time in the aquatic environment, the marine iguana significantly lowers its body temperature. There is no subcutaneous fat, which means it can be fraught with bad consequences. To avoid the trouble, these iguanas sunbathe after every long walk in the sea, thus normalizing heat exchange. Huge stingray. In Cambodia, fishermen accidentally spotted an incredibly huge stingray. Realizing that a local science center often conducts research on local waters, they contacted scientists and told them about an obscure object in the water that could be of value to them. People quickly arrived at the site and pulled a 661-pound stingray out of the Mekong River. It became the largest documented freshwater fish in the world. The stingray was measured in every way. DNA samples were taken, a sensor was attached to it, and it was released back into the water. It's strange that having such cool technology, people couldn't have come across this 13-foot-long stingray before. It seems impossible not to notice it. What's also hard not to notice is the manta ray, also known as the devilfish. This is the largest stingray species. The body width of some animals is up to 30 feet, and they weigh up to 6,600 pounds. The manta ray pectoral fins fuse with the head to form a diamond-shaped disc, the width of which exceeds its length. The front part of the pectoral fins are transformed into so-called cephalic fins. Unlike other stingrays, the manta ray's mouth is not at the bottom but at the frontal edge. When the ocean titan opens it, it seems that such a vortex could engulf any ship. Fortunately, this dweller of the depths feeds on zooplankton. Giant isopods. And now I will show you the representatives of the big Isopoda genus that lives in the great depth of the ocean and reach a length of 27.5 feet, weighing up to 4.5 pounds. It's unknown what made the crustacean demon grow so much, but the fact remains. These creepy creatures crawl along the bottom and look for food there. They're kind of infernal cleaners at the depth. They eat all the dead bodies below, as well as any other organic remains. Occasionally, giant isopods prey on sea cucumbers, starfish, and other creatures that move too slowly to escape the prospect of being eaten alive. Like woodlice, giant isopods have a kind of exoskeleton that allows them to curl up in a ball and protect their soft tissues in case of danger. They also have 7 pairs of legs, the front ones acting as food pushers. Imagine a creature which name translates simultaneously as big, long arms and weapon. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't risk encountering one. I'm talking about the Japanese spider crab, which can be incredibly large compared to its other relatives. For example, this spider crab often weighs 44 pounds, which is equivalent to the weight of a 6-year-old child. By the way, it's not only the largest of crabs, but also the largest arthropod. It can be 31 inches long and have 20-foot-long legs. Fortunately, it's not so easy to find such a monster because it lives at a depth of at least 492 feet and is perfectly camouflaged. In addition to long legs, the Japanese spider crab has 2 arms, each of which ends with a claw like its normal crab relatives. Males have larger claws than females. That's all, guys. Which animal do you consider to be the most dangerous in history? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.